In today's devlog, we're taking a look at some new abilities, guardians and a new NPC that we have added to Billy's nightmare. But more about that later. First, I wanna show you some changes that we have made to another NPC based on your feedback. In the last devlog, I showed you our Santa NPC and his workshop. If you found this room, you would get a Christmas gift containing a free ability. The problem was that this was way too similar to our Easter Bunny room, where you would also get a free ability if you could find his hidden Easter egg. So, I asked you for suggestions about how we can make our Santa NPC better and more different. And we got a lot of comments with great feedback. To make Santa more unique, he could ask you to deliver his present to a specific point on the level. Maybe Santa has to deliver his gift to another NPC. What if the present is somewhere in the level, and the player must find it and return it to Santa? The most popular suggestion was that the player has to deliver presents from or to Santa's room, and then you would get a reward. And we really liked the idea of having the player delivering presents for Santa.
Ho ho ho!
The question was, where would you pick up or drop off the presents? The only room that we know for sure will appear on every level is the Tooth Fairy shop. And in that room, you can also find Santa's elf, so it felt obvious to include him in Santa's quest. Our first idea was that Billy would pick up a gift bag from Santa's elf, and then return it to Santa. But how would we show the player that Billy was carrying the gift bag? We didn't want to add more distracting icons to our UI, especially for only this quest. And what would happen if the player continued to the next level while still having the gift bag in his inventory? This new quest was starting to feel a bit problematic. But then we got an idea. What if we instead allowed Santa's elf to pick up the gift bag, carry it on his back, and then follow Billy back to Santa's workshop? We already had some code from our new guardians that allows an NPC to follow the player around, so this would be quick to fix. So Fabian drew a couple of new animations for Santa's elf, where he carries the gift bag, and I fixed a new code that allows Santa's elf to follow Billy back to Santa. But what would happen if the player enters a room full of enemies together with Santa's elf? If you have found both the shop and Santa's workshop, you technically always have a safe path between the rooms, but the player can of course choose to enter other rooms on his way back. We didn't want Santa's elf to be able to die, and we didn't want him to damage enemies, so you can use him to clear rooms. So, if he spots an enemy, his attack script basically tells him to jump into the gift bag and take cover until the coast is clear. Our new escort quest was almost finished, but we felt that it was pretty underwhelming to run all the way back without killing any enemies and then getting a reward for nothing. So we got the idea to add an ambush, where some new enemies would spawn in the last room you have to pass through on your way back to Santa. When the player gets close to the door, it closes in front of him, new enemies appear and Santa's elf hides in the gift bag. This immediately made the quest more fun, and it also felt more satisfying to get a reward after surviving that ambush. And this quest feels so much more interesting, compared to the old version, where you would just receive a free gift. And it was also fun to get some company from Santa's elf, when you're so used to only see him working inside Tooth Fairy's shop. And speaking of NPCs, we have actually added a new one. But who is he, and what is his purpose? Well, when playing the game after dying over and over again, you sometimes feel that it would be nice with a small boost to get to the next level a bit faster. So we got the idea to add a new room with some portals, leading to both the shop and the boss room corridor. This would help the player to get around the level a bit faster. So we decided to make our new NPC a scientist.
Greetings!
And place him in a lab, where he'd be experimenting with portal technology. When entering the lab, the portals are not activated by default, so Billy has to take part in the experiment by turning a red valve in the middle of the room. After that, you can choose if you want to make a quick visit to the shop. or if you want to face the boss immediately. With so many of our other NPCs giving you free abilities, it was fun to add an NPC that helps you in another way. With the scientist NPC added, we have actually decided to stop adding more NPCs. Why, you might ask? Well, since the game has 3 levels, with 2 NPC rooms per level, you can only find a total of 6 NPCs if you play through the whole game without dying. As we now have 7 NPCs in the game, it means that during one playthrough you're not able to find them all. And you won't know for sure who the last NPC on the final level will be. So we believe that we have now reached the minimum amount of NPCs that we need for the game. But, of course, if we get some suggestions for new NPCs that sounds really interesting, we might add them to the game. But we don't want to spend valuable developing time trying to come up with more NPCs, when we can focus on doing more important stuff instead. So the scientist and his portals might be the last NPC room in a while. Speaking of portals, we have actually added 2 new portal abilities. We really like the feeling of using the portals inside the scientist's lab to get around the level faster. So we decided to take it a step further and add a couple of abilities with similar effect. So, the first ability that we have added is the Tooth Stone, which of course is a reference to the Heartstone from World of Warcraft. When using the Tooth Stone ability, Billy is teleported to the Tooth Fairy shop, whether it's explored or not. This can be a lifesaver if you need to buy some sleeping pills to restore your sleep, but you have no idea where the shop is. But of course, you can't use the Tooth Stone while you're in combat, because that would be pretty game breaking. The other ability that we have added is kinda like an upgrade to the Tooth Stone. And what can be better than the ability to teleport to the shop? Well, the ability to also be able to teleport back when you're done. So, the other ability that we have added is the Scroll of Shop portal, which of course is a reference to the Scroll of Town portal from Diablo.
Stay a while and listen.
When using the scroll, a permanent portal is created between your location and the shop. This doesn't replace an existing portal between the shop and the boss room corridor, so you don't have to choose one portal over the other. When you're done in the shop, you can then use your created portal to get back to where you were before. And just like the Tooth Stone ability, the Scroll of Shop portal ability can't be used while in combat. This was actually the first abilities that we have added that doesn't have a combat purpose. And we feel like they added something new to the game, so we'd like to add more abilities like this in the future. In the last devlog, I asked you for suggestions for new guardians that we can add to the game, so you can find more than just a dragon. One of the suggestions that we got was from Red Swords, who wanted us to add a Yeti who can freeze enemies. And we really liked this suggestion. Since we already have a guardian with a fire attack, it felt interesting to add a guardian with an ice attack. Instead of making a huge Yeti that follows you around and takes up a lot of space, we decided to make a smaller baby Yeti. If the baby Yeti spots an enemy, he starts to throw snowballs that freezes all enemies within range of the impact. His attack looks really cool, no pun intended, but at the moment he is a bit overpowered, because he can pretty much take care of a whole room full of enemies all by himself. So perhaps we have to increase the cooldown of the snowball attack and give him a secondary filler attack that damages enemies without freezing them. Besides the baby Yeti, there was one suggestion that many of you had in common, and that was for us to add a dog as a guardian. And we agree, a boy and his dog feels like a good combination. The problem was that we didn't know how to make the dog's attack interesting. It felt obvious to let him run up to enemies and bite them, but then he would be easily surrounded, take a lot of damage and die instantly. But then I remembered a new mechanic that I was working on for the player. For some time, we had wanted to give the player some sort of fear ability. What if we allow the dog to bark and apply a fear effect to enemies within range, making them run away from him? The problem was that the dog would run up to an enemy and bark, causing the enemy to run away, which would make the dog have to chase the enemy around the room and repeat the process. To solve this, we made it so that all the enemies around the dog run away when he barks, but his original target would get paralyzed by fear and stay put. This both gives the dog some extra space and makes it easier for him to bite his target. We'll see if we add any more guardians in the future. Now we at least have 3 of them with different mechanics. A dragon that applies a fire dot to enemies. A baby Yeti that freezes them. And a dog that barks at the enemies, making them run away. This feels like a pretty good lineup. Lastly, we have also added a couple of new items to the game. Yes, items, not abilities. So, what exactly would an item be in Billy's Nightmare? Well, technically, we already have items in the game. And if you have played our demo, you have probably used them. I am of course talking about the sleeping pills, which give you sleep, which is our version of health. Unlike the abilities, which you can use over and over again on a cooldown, the items are something that you activate immediately and use only once, which you can see in their description. Sleeping pills have the effect of restoring 35 sleep to the player, but we can of course add all kinds of effects and buffs here. So, the first new item that we have added is the GPS. When the player activates this item, the map for all levels automatically gets explored. Our first idea was to have the GPS only explore your current level, but it would feel pretty bad if you found a GPS in the last room of a level, and then you couldn't use it anymore. So we just decided to make it explore all levels instead. The next item that we have added is an old classic for games with mounts, and it's the carrot and a stick. Activating this item increases your mounted movement speed by 50%. This is of course nothing you can use while in combat, but it's always nice to travel faster between rooms, especially if you have to backtrack long distances. The third item that we have added is the lucky dice, which increases your crit chance by 100%. As a default, you have a 10% chance to land a critical strike with each attack, causing it to deal double damage. So by activating this item, you increase your crit chance to 20% instead, which is a nice bonus. The fourth item that we have added is the coupons, which lowers all prices by 20%. This item also stacks, so if you're lucky to find more coupons, you can make the prices go even lower. The coupons make it cheaper to buy stuff from the pirate NPC, the Tooth Fairy shop, and also makes it cheaper to use Santa's Elf's gamble feature. Since the coupons is an item that makes other things cheaper to buy, it felt weird to let the NPCs sell this item in their shops. So, your only chance to get this item is if you find it in the Easter Bunny's Easter egg, or similar places where you can get abilities for free. And the last item that we have added so far is the energy drink, which lowers the cooldown of all abilities by 25%. Or rather, on all abilities that have a cooldown of at least 1 second. Otherwise, all of our faster abilities would get faster than the game's global cooldown, and that wouldn't make sense. But this item affects basically all abilities that you can find in the game. Plus your secondary starting ability, which usually have a longer cooldown. So it's a fun bonus to be able to use that ability more often. Now that we have added these new items, we are of course eager to add more. It's possible to add items with basically all kinds of buffs and effects, but we don't want to add items with temporary effects that disappears after a while, because we don't want to add tons of annoying timers to the UI. Plus, it would feel a bit silly to wait and buy a time-based item until it's time to fight a boss, and then run to the boss room as fast as you can before the item timer runs out. But besides that, we can add anything. So we'd love to get some ideas from you guys. So, what kind of new items should we add to the game? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.